Okay, so this is how you do the screen trace for your Triadic and Monochrome assignment. You just pull the image up on whatever computer you've got, laptop, desktop, tablet, whatever, and you want to try to have it be around 7.5 by 10 inches approximately. It doesn't have to be exactly that. That's not that important, but right around in that area, so it will fit on, a sheet of tracing paper. So you basically just take your tracing paper, put it over the image like this. I'm using Suzanne, the Barmaid, the Folie Bergère by Manet, and then you just tape it up on the screen with. I'm just using artist tape. Like that, and then you can see the image, right? And what I like to do is I'll just take a Sharpie and just start, tracing out the outlines of everything here. So I just have to hold the screen a little bit, and I'm just drawing Suzanne. And you can note I'm not going in for a lot of detail. I can do that later. I just want to basically block out where everything in the image is. Okay. Like her arms here. I'll go down here in the detail of like the oranges. They're in the bowl, like that. The bowl itself. This bottle here. This bottle here, which actually is a bottle of Bass Ale. And I think in reading all my art history books, that it's the first time that you saw a logo in a painting. Doing the flowers down here, the bar, like that. I'm not going to do the whole thing, but you can see that I'm just basically blocking it out, and you can save the detail for later. The next step you do after you basically draw out everything in the image is then we do the graphite transfer process, which I will show you how to do next. I think most of the class was doing work digitally the last time I did the graphite transfer, but everybody is painting this assignment this time. So for those of you that either didn't see it, didn't pay attention, or don't remember it, I'm just going to do a quick little graphite transfer demo after this. But I just want to point out, so you want to tape it to the screen, make it 7.5 by 10, use your Sharpie. I just think they're easier. I mean, you can use anything you want, but I just find the Sharpie works best when you're doing a graphite transfer. And try to get, as much of the general information blocked out, and you can worry about the detail later. If you have a printer, when you get to the point where you're actually, painting this, if you have a laptop, most of you can probably just keep your laptop right next to this when you're painting and just look at the image. For someone like me, who has, I don't have a laptop, I just have this big desktop iMac. I need to print it out so that I can, have it next to me when I'm painting, because I don't want my paints anywhere near this thing. And I just simply don't have room to do it. And maybe a lot of you are in the same predicament. But if you have a printer, it can be helpful to print it out for your color references. But frankly, the color that you're going to get looking at it on the screen is going to be much more vivid and probably much more helpful to you. But first step, you got to graphite transfer it, and we're going to do that now. Okay, so the next step is the graphite transfer. And here is the the little Sharpie drawing I just made off the screen. And what you do is you flip it over, so it's like a mirror image of it, and take a pencil and just rub on the back everywhere you drew, which for this assignment actually, unlike the hierarchy and ambiguity, continuity, and grouping assignment, you actually will be doing this over most of, if not all of, the back of the paper. I mean, the back of the tracing paper. So I'm just going to do the items that were on the bar just to save us some time without getting into Suzanne and everything else that's in the image. So you just, put all this graphite down on the bottom on the reverse side, and then you just flip it back over And line it up. And just line it up here. Okay. And you want to tape it down again so it doesn't move around, just like you didn't want it to move around on the screen on your computer. So you just tape all this stuff down. Okay. And then just draw. You know, I prefer a pen because it pushes more of the graphite into the board. And then you just trace again, only instead of tracing on the screen like you were doing before, now you're just tracing on the board. And again, I'm not that concerned yet with, there we go, I forgot to draw that line. I'm not that concerned with the detail. That is going to come out as you are working through all the painting parts of this assignment. And it will be a lot of detail. Anyway, so you draw over all that with a pen, and then take, when you're finally done with the entire back of it, then you take away that. And look at that, isn't that great? You know. And that's the graphite transfer, and that will be your guideline for the actual painting. I'll actually get a little bit closer in on that. There you go. Oops, sorry, I'm blocking the light. There. Right, now maybe there you can see it a little bit better. Anyway, so that's how you do the graphite transfer. And now we move on to the fun part, the painting. Okay, and now for the fun part, the painting part. Now remember, this first part of the assignment, the Triadic assignment, is all about having the wrong color but the right brightness. So it's all about the connection between color and value. So you want to have a plan when you're going in and working on this. The monochrome one is a little bit easier because you're just dealing with one color, but that's why I want you to start with this one because it is the most difficult. So basically you've got all 5 of your paints laid out. You have your primary yellow, you've got your quinacridone magenta, you've got your cerulean, and white and black. And the plan that you need to have is when you're looking at the image that you're working from, like I'm looking at this Manet painting, the Bar at the Folie Bergère, and you want to make decisions about the right color or the wrong color. So I'm going to start off first like with the oranges. So the key is I don't want you to paint it orange, or and again remember, you cannot mix the colors with each other. You can only mix the yellow with white and black, or the magenta with white and black, or the cerulean with white and black. So you can't mix these colors with one another. You can't mix yellow and magenta and then get this orange. That's not the point. The point is showing you each color's relative strength in terms of temperature and in terms of value, in terms of light and dark. Okay? So, for example, I start with the oranges because it's pretty obvious. So they're orange, so that's a really warm color. And the complement of orange is blue. So that's as far away from orange as you can get. That is definitely like a wrong color. So I'm going to use the blue. But I'm not just painting them blue. I also have to match that value. So you're trying to make them blue. Here, I'll just mix up a little bit here. And you can see really, you know, this is how I do it with a printout. You can maybe do it, you know, like just literally like comparing the brush to the image on the screen. But, you know, when I go in here really closely, I'm trying to get in here really closely, you can see that the blue, is significantly darker than the orange. So I'm going to lighten it up. So I add white to it. A lot of white to it. Okay. And now I look at it. Now that might be a little bit too light. Maybe I overcooked it. And the nice thing is, if you make, you know, if you think that you need to alter something, you can just paint over it. You know? So I'm going to paint the oranges down here. Let me try to get. I know it's hard because I cannot. I have to keep looking over at my iPhone to make sure that I'm like the camera's in the right place. But so I'll start there. and compare that to the lightness of the oranges. Right now it's a little hard to tell, but I can see that by comparing them, that the blue of the orange is near, kind of, to the, just in terms of lightness, not in terms of hue at all. That's a really warm color, that's a really cool color. But in terms of, like, are they about the same lightness? Yeah, they're a lot closer. And once the paint dries, and this is another tip for all of you when you're trying to color match, which is what this assignment is kind of about, when you're trying to do that, sometimes, frequently, the gouache will dry darker than it looks like when it's wet like this. Okay, so you want to make sure that you wait for it to dry, and then you can kind of compare it. And mine's still wet, so it's still a little shiny. Let's clean the brush here. But that's basically the general idea. So, and then there are detail parts in here. Again, I'm trying to get in here really close. There are detail parts in here, like little shadowy areas. So for those, I might actually just stick with the with blue, see how that looks like out of the bottle to get those shadow areas. Because I want all of you to, you know, really this is kind of a long-lasting assignment, meaning it's going to take you a while to do this. Because there's a fair amount, I expect a fair amount of detail in your images that we will choose together. You're going to provide me with 6. We're going to pick 1, okay? And I want them to be fairly heavily detailed because that's part of the challenge of the assignment. So you can see I just painted, you know, like here's like the shadows of the swatches. We'll go back in and do the highlight again, you know. And I might change that, you know, later on. So clean the brush. And now I'm looking at, what else is a good example? Because here is Suzanne's arm, okay, in the painting. And I know I told before we were so rudely interrupted by the dying battery on the camera, we were talking about Suzanne's arm. And I mentioned that I'm trying to get all of you, if you have flesh tones or, you know, figures and stuff in your painting, or in your image that you're painting from, try to avoid using yellow because it just, you know, it's the Simpsons skin tone color, so it's a little too obvious and kind of funny. But so I do want to make Suzanne's arm really, really light, but I don't want to use yellow. So I was using, here we go, still got a little left. I was using the magenta, and you really, really, you know, want to make it super light. So I'm basically going to mix up, you know, I'm going to take white, you know, and like really like that light, probably, something like that. And even that might be too dark. Let's take a look. And that's the nice thing about this assignment is if you miscalculate or you misjudge, you know, like the value of the color that you're working with, you can paint right over it, no problem. You can also add water if you need to. This will especially come in hand with little details. And I'm kind of looking at the arm sideways, and I'm thinking it might still need to be lighter than that. So I'm going to go, I'll wait till that's, let's see. Yeah, I'm going to wait for that to dry and come back to it. But especially for detail, like I said, you can add water. It's okay. You're not doing swatches. They don't have to be totally opaque. In fact, transparency can help you with making values lighter, right? So, you know, instead of, let's say, taking the magenta, you know, and just adding white to it, you can just make it a wash like this, right? And paint something like maybe on the bar. Like that, or even lighter still, all right? And I'm just going to test paint here, but see what I'm doing? Like, so you can do that, you know, instead of just adding white to something. And the reason that helps is I want to paint, I'm going to show you a little detail thing, but I want to paint the detail on that that Bass Ale bottle. And it's red, a little red triangle. So what do? No, I don't use red. I'm actually going to use yellow and add a little black to it. Not too much. Yeah, that might be too much. You know, to get a kind of medium value and add a little water to it, lighten it up a little bit. And then this is a little, you know, if you're doing technique, by the way, like detail technique, this is how I do it. Is like I'll smear the paint around with a little water in it, like that. And then I roll the brush between my thumb and my forefinger. You know, I roll it and pull it up. And that gives you a nice, let's hold it okay, so I can see it. Gives you a nice pointed tip. And I'll go down in here and detail it like crazy. But you can get some terrific detail like that. Right? Look at that. Isn't that great? And then I will do the same thing with the magenta for the label around it. It's the same kind of like really light magenta. While I've got it here mixed on my palette, why not? Oops. Don't get it all over your fingers. Right? So again, I'm always thinking, always planning, always plotting. But I'm always thinking about what the next step is going to be, like as I move across the different parts of my image and my painting. I'm looking at it going, okay, it's a Bass Ale bottle, there's a red triangle on it. There still is, you know, what this is 100 and whatever years later, almost 200 years later. And so I know that it's red, and so I'm going to mix a different color that has the same value or a similar value to it. So, you know, the rest of the label is kind of a light brown, but instead I go with the magenta, like a real pale magenta, just like Suzanne's are. And the other technique I showed you was, I showed you how to do the detail parts. I've showed you how to like add a lot of water if you want to lighten the colors up. But always keep in mind the plan, which is it's the wrong color every time, you know, and trying to find the right lightness. So for example, like Suzanne's, like her dress, it's really, really dark. But I don't want you to mix grays. I told you that. Like no grays, you know, no whites, no blacks. I always want the colors, you know, it's okay to mix each of the three colors, yellow, magenta, and cerulean, with white or black or gray, but they can't mix with one another. Okay, just I want to make sure we stress that before you start on the assignment. And I think that just about covers it. I don't want to get too far into it because that's, first of all, makes the demo a lot longer, and secondly, this is your assignment and you need to make the plan. But I think I hopefully illustrated to you, well, let's just do one more. This bottle is kind of a magenta color. Don't know what's in it. It's kind of a weird color. Anyway, but it's kind of a magenta color, so what am I going to do? Well, I'm sure as hell not going to use magenta. And it's really dark, so I'm going to, let's try blue. And the blue is not that, you know, it's not that dark necessarily. So I'm going to add a little black to it. You know, and it's, I didn't draw it with the, see, I'm adding water, it's okay. You know, if I decide I want to go back in and do some more detail on top, I'll wait for it to dry and do that. Or I can go wet into wet, like the paint's still wet, you know, from all the water I put into it. Here's like the top of the bottle. And I can do just real quick, like add a little bit of white in here and do some wet into wet highlights that are on the bottle. It's kind of hard to see because it's so reflective and I'm trying to get it here so you can see it. But I'm doing these wet into wet highlights like Manet would paint on the bottle. Boom, 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 like that. Nice, huh? He also has, I know I did the oranges and blue, and now I'm going to do a real pale blue. Okay. Make a real pale blue highlight to go on top of the oranges. Because there are those highlights, if you're looking at the oranges, like little sun-reflected highlights. And it's not white, it's just a real pale blue. And I put there, and I'm just matching, you know, I'm just copying. You know, I'm matching the highlights that Manet put on the oranges here, like that. Isn't that lovely? So I think that kind of, I've showed you a range of techniques. If you have any questions after the demo, we'll talk, and I'm glad to help you guys out in any way you can. Just remember, wrong color, right value, right brightness. And make sure, as you know, like keep all three of your paints out here, and your white and your black. And make sure you have your little brushes, because these aren't very big paintings. And you want to make sure that you have the ability to make things like this tiny. So you're not like using some big old huge brush like your flat brush that you used for all the scales, because you can't use that here. You really can't. Oh yeah, and then one other thing I was going to talk about, Suzanne, because she's basically, I'm going to make a dark gray, which is okay, as long as, it's not, she's not black. The color's not black, it's just really dark gray. And it's kind of cool looking, so I'm going to use, something warmer, using a little bit of yellow, okay? So it is a color, it's almost a gray, but I'm getting a little more into it, okay? And then that would be Suzanne. And the back of her dress. And it would be a good color also for Suzanne's arm coming down, which I didn't really draw out all that fully. So I'll lay it in there. And I think you get the idea. So that's how to do, or at least begin, the right color, the wrong color, right brightness assignment. And it'll take a while. And you got to do the monochrome too, but we'll explain that one later. Alrighty, there you go. And we'll stop right there.